Hello everyone and welcome. I, Palladium PD, am your host in Minecraft 1.6.4, which is not showing up because I didn't press F1. There we go. The reason I'm in 1.6.4 is because of this. Bam! Bounding box mod by APOD, or APOD, I can't remember. Yeah, APOD I think it is. So, it's been a year since I did a video on this, at least. I think it's been a bit more than a year. So I thought it might be time for a bit of a refresher course. We want to look at where can the wither skeletons spawn and how can we maximize that. So let's first think about how spawning works in general. Suppose the game wants to spawn a mob. First of all, it looks for air blocks. So fire, bad, not an air block. Solid block, bad, not an air block. This block right here, yes, we could use that. That is an air block. So the spawning algorithm starts here, on this block here. And now it goes around in a 20 by 20 area, or it goes, I think it might actually be further than that. So it sort of looks around and does a random walk trying to figure out a spot to start the spawning algorithm, or rather to start the spawning process. And if it fails, I think it tries again. And now suppose it succeeds. It finds this block right here. And it says, okay, spawn mobs from this block. Does a mob get spawned on that block? The answer is maybe. What it actually tries to do is it tries to spawn a pack, and the type of mob that the pack is has to all be the same. So it'll spawn, say, a wither skeleton group or a skeleton mob here, and then in some region around this point, mostly within a few blocks, it'll spawn all the mobs of that type at the same y coordinates on spawnable blocks. So if we have, say, let's just get a few blocks here for demonstration purposes. Suppose we have glass here. Okay, first of all, they would not be able to start the spawning at this block because it's not a solid block. It has to start spawning from a solid block. That's condition number one. So it has to be a solid block, and then it also has to spawn the other mobs from the pack on solid blocks at the same y coordinate. So it can't spawn a mob here, but it can spawn a mob here. So we could get a wither skeleton spawning algorithm starting here, and we could have a wither skeleton spawning right here. I don't really know if I can show you that easily right now, but I will show you later in the video how that all works using a witch hut. So the simple thing we can do to increase wither skeleton spawns is we know that they spawn on this surface here. So, you know, we could just like take out this wall right here, and that would mean that we'd have all of these extra spaces for the spawning algorithm to spawn wither skeletons, because even though it can also spawn them up here, there are far less solid blocks at this y coordinate for them to spawn on. So we're just adding more blocks to the same y coordinate. And we're actually also adding blocks from which the spawning algorithm can start to spawn the pack. So if it spawns a pack on these blocks over here, then wither skeletons might spawn out here. No problem at all. Okay, so we know that, which means a couple of things which I think most people aren't really too aware of. See, we want to spawn wither skeletons, we want to increase the spawn rate, so we want to increase the spawn area. But also, we can increase the spawn area not just by flattening out this fortress, but also by adding extra blocks along the side. If we put solid blocks outside this fortress, wither skeletons that are part of a pack that spawns inside here will also spawn out here. So we could increase the spawn rate just by sort of increasing the size of the fortress. Now, I've actually chosen a very bad example because this is an intersection. So this is actually also part of the regular spawning part. But if we say go out to one of these walkways, let's get rid of this. If we if we go out to a walkway like this one over here, if we started placing blocks over here to add more solid blocks to the same y coordinate, or spawning surfaces to the same y coordinate, that would definitely help to increase our wither skeleton spawns. Now, of course, there is a corollary, which is that pigmen will spawn on these blocks, which means we could get more pigmen over here as well. But if we're constantly flushing the mobs from the system, then I think overall the chances are we will get more wither skeletons overall, assuming that you recycle the area a bit more often, and also assuming that you haven't completely eliminated all other spawning space. And you know, pigmen can spawn here too, so it's hard to tell exactly what's going on. Like, it's hard to tell, are the pigmen spawning over here or are they spawning over here? But ultimately I think it doesn't matter. We want wither skeletons, and if we increase the spawning space for them, then if a pack spawns here, then we might get more members out here, as long as there is room available in the mob cap, right? So we want room available in the mob cap, which means we kill the pigman. There is ways to do that, and I will point you to one of my videos to show you a quick and easy way of doing that. So the next thing we need to know is, where exactly can the wither skeletons spawn? Now you can see I've got this bounding box mod, which tells us the bounding boxes of the various spawning locations for the fortress mobs. So inside these areas there's an increased rate of spawn of magma cubes, the blaze will naturally spawn, and the wither skeletons will naturally spawn, and the regular mobs, the pigmen and the ghasts and so on, also can spawn, of course, but they have the normal rate, I believe. So if we want to get the most out of our fortress, we need to increase the spawn area, and that means that we need to know the size and the nature of these boxes that the mobs can spawn in. So let's talk about nature first of all. So here we have one of these stair block tower things with the nether wart in. The size of this guy is let's see, let's go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. So I believe it's square, so 13 by 13, and its height is 2, yep, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So the question is, at what y coordinates will the wither skeletons spawn, and what y coordinates won't they spawn? Well, I can tell you, they do not spawn on top here. They will spawn if the block they're trying to spawn in is within this bounding box. So it's not dependent on the surface that they spawn, it's dependent on the air block in which they are spawning, or whatever else it might be. There can be transparent blocks, no problem. They don't have to be air blocks. The spawning algorithm has to start in an air block, but this pack spawn can happen if there is, it can even happen if there's a piece of glass on top. So a pack could spawn on here, and we could get pigmen, you know, in here from a pigmen spawn, pigmen pack spawning on there. So they will spawn here, and they will spawn all the way down to a surface here. So here again, their feet are inside an air block that is inside the bounding box. Obviously that particular block is inside the bounding box, but if it were to be over here, then the wither skeleton could spawn here, and a pack could spawn here, so we could expand this out this way, like that. Okay, so those are the basics of how the spawning works. Now I want to show you more about the pack spawning, and to do that I'm going to use a witch hut So I'll be back in this world in a little while to show you the sizes of all of these structures, so that you don't have to load this mod yourself. Although I do recommend that you do. It's an interesting mod for sure. But in the meantime, let's look a little bit at how this pack spawning stuff works. I just want to prove what I've just said. So, I shall return very shortly. Okay, here's my witch hut. I have generously used world edit, as you can see. And this is a typical witch hut configuration. 2 spawning floors, 3 blocks apart. You know the story. So, the question always arrives at some point, because most people will use the shifting floor design for witch huts. The question will usually arise, how should we power this piston? Because there are problems however we do it. Let me illustrate. Oops. Let's get some of this, let's get some of this, some of these, some of these. Yeah, some transparent blocks-ish. And okay, so suppose we power this block right here. So we have like a line of redstone dust. That's the one I wanted to get. Line of redstone dust over here, and we put like a repeater in there. So we're powering this block that powers the piston, and this, we lock off the light however we want to. Okay, this creates 2 problems. First of all, this is a spawnable surface, and so is this redstone right here. So the spawning algorithm can't start here because it's not an air block, but it can try to spawn a pack here, and if it does, there's a chance that some other type of mob, it might be a slime, might be a skeleton or a creeper or a zombie or a spider, one of the typical overworld mobs will spawn inside our witch hut boundaries. Now, some people don't care about that. I personally do, because I would prefer all of the mobs to be witches for 2 reasons. Number 1, increased drop rate. Number 2, I don't want to have to deal with mobs that are not the same sort of collision mask size as witches. So the bounding box for slimes, of course, is going to be different, and so is the bounding box for spiders. I don't want to have to deal with those mobs. I want the 2 high, 1 wide mobs. So I can't just choose skeletons and creepers and zombies only with witches. So the best way is to simply exclude all other mobs. Now, the typical way to do that is to say, okay, well, this block right here, we don't want mobs spawning on this block, so we'll just do that, right? So we stop the mob from spawning on that block. And well, here, okay, so it's not great, but if we like put a half slab there, then only the tiny slime will be able to spawn in there, and then it'll sort of fall off, right? Well, we still have a problem, because here, even though we have now stopped mobs from spawning on this block, we haven't started the packs from spawning on this block, because there's 2 transparent blocks above it. So a pack of skeletons could still spawn on this block, even if there's a half slab, and then we could get skeletons spawning in here. And same with this one here, right? So the way to prevent any mob from being able to spawn there is to remove the fact that there is a transparent block here. Now, we want an air block here, ideally, because we want the spawning algorithm to be able to start here with an air block, and then to choose one of these here inside the witch hut to start the pack spawning, and then spawn a pack of witches. What we don't want is for there to be no air block, because that will very slightly, but it will definitely reduce the efficiency of this spawn space inside here. So the way we do that is solid block above. So we have an air block in here, no problem with that, and we have a solid block above here. So this block is not spawnable in any sense. There's no spawning algorithm that will try to place a pack of mobs there, but there is an air block, so the spawning algorithm can start from here and end up hopefully on one of these. Same with this, we have redstone. This is a block on which a pack can begin to spawn, so we block it. So now what we have here is a system that can power the pistons, which is light proof, and There are no air blocks here, so that is a downside. And of course there are other ways to do this, but this is my personal preferred way. And the result is that we can have no other mobs spawning in here. Now, I want to show you proof that this works. So let us begin by simply proving that this is a witch hut, right? We can see the bounding box is working, and you can see already that these air blocks here are inside the bounding box, but the surface blocks are not. So the question is, are mobs going to spawn on here? And well, I can show you. Let us do this. Show me some witches. There we go. Yes, brilliant. Okay, so clearly the witches can spawn here and they can spawn here. If we move this platform up one, they would not be able to spawn. So let's just get rid of them quickly. Now let's talk about extra blocks outside here. So if we put actually let's choose a different block type. I think the wool. So in theory now other mobs can spawn on these blocks, but what we're going to do is prevent them from actually spawning physically on these blocks. So this is just to demonstrate that the pack algorithm is starting on these blocks and causing, or the packs are being spawned on these blocks and causing other mobs to bleed into this witch hut area. So let's move away. Ideally we should move up, so I think I might well do that. I've got ice here that allows us to see through while still blocking the light. Let's go. Apparently further is needed. Okay, we got a witch, got some more witches. Spawning on that side is going to be reduced because of the lack of air blocks, but let's see what happens. Come on, Minecraft. Help me out. No, they're out of... Ah, here we go. So you see we have a zombie down there. Last time we had only... Ooh, look at that. Last time we had only witches. Maybe there's too much light here. Let's find out. SL11. There is a lot of light here. That was not the case in one of the other ones. Okay, so we had a zombie up here, and that is sort of demonstrative proof that this surface was influenced by packs spawning on these blocks here. So now let us prove that we can block the spawning by putting a solid block one block above. So there's still an airspace, so the spawning algorithm will still start, but we will not have the problem of other mobs spawning as well. And yeah, I guess we'll just leave it. Okay. So we should see no creepers, zombies, spiders, all the other things. We should see only witches. On the top platform. Okay, let's cycle it again. Really should prevent the light from getting to that platform. Let's do that, because it's dramatically decreasing our spawn rates. I'll be right back. Okay, this is more like it. Let's get back to hard. So do we see any other mobs spawning in there? That is the question. Will any other mobs spawn on the top platform? I think that answer is pretty definitive. But let's make it even more definitive. Let's go back to peaceful, and I shall be right back. Okay, prediction time. I predict that there will be witches spawning in the purple area on the top level, but nothing at all, well, no witches spawning on the purple area at the bottom level. So let's try it out. Come on, game, don't let me down. Okay, we got a few creepers and skeletons and things. Give me a witch. Come on, come on. It's a pretty low chance, but it can happen. Let's go up here and what's the entity count? This is not quite big enough to prevent spawns. Ooh, look, a spider. Not quite big enough to prevent spawns. Oh, there. Aha! Good. So we have proved the point. As you see, no witches, plenty of spiders. And look, witches out here, outside the witch hut. So, that's how it all works. I think that's enough about the spawning algorithm. It's time to return to the Nether fortress and figure out which sections, or what size the different sections are. So, let's do that. Okay, here we are. Now, thinking back, I think that expanding these platforms like this might be a false economy. And the reason I think that is because, well, actually it depends. If you have eliminated all other spawnable space, then all of the mob spawning will be in your fortress, and it'll reach the mob cap in no time because the fortress is huge, right? So what you want in that case is you don't want to expand this area, because then you only get exactly the proportion of mobs that you would expect in the fortress. So you would expect a certain quantity of skeletons, and 80% of them will be wither skeletons and so on. But if you have eliminated all the spawn spaces and you expand it like this, then the mob proportions from this will bleed into your fortress and reduce the overall efficiency by some amount. So the original conception when I figured out to do this was that, well, say a pack spawns here and it wants to spawn a wither skeleton out here, but it can't because there's no block there. Let's put a block there so it can spawn one there. So that's good. But the converse is also true. The outside here, we want to spawn a pigman, and right now it can't spawn pigmen out here because there's no blocks, but if we put a block there, then it can. So I think, depending on your situation, it could increase your chances of finding wither skeletons, or it could decrease them. So if you've eliminated spawn spaces, don't do that. If you haven't, then it might be a good idea, or at least you can consider it. Okay, let's now consider the size of these different structures. I'm going to break the video up into piece by piece so that it doesn't get too boring, because I know it's already getting quite long, but there's a lot of information to get through. So I'll be back when I've started to organize this stuff. Just before I do that, there's one more thing I want to show. You cannot put your spawning floors 2 blocks apart because wither skeletons suffocate. So what you need is 2.5 blocks. You can use half slabs. Oops, let's do this. Half slabs like that are fine, and the additional value is that they don't seem to be able to track you if their head is inside this sort of half slab area. The broken end pieces are 10 blocks high, 5 blocks wide, and 8 blocks long, which allows you to fit in 4 spawning platforms. The normal walkways are 10 blocks high, 5 blocks wide, and 19 blocks long. This allows you to make 4 spawning platforms. The large intersections are 10 blocks high and 19 blocks on a side. This allows you to make 4 spawning platforms. The small arched intersections are 9 blocks high and 7 blocks square, allowing you to place 3 spawn platforms. The blaze spawner structures are 8 blocks high, 9 blocks long, and 7 blocks wide, allowing you to place 3 spawn platforms. The roofed corridors are 7 blocks high and 5 blocks square, allowing you to place 3 spawn platforms. The corridor stairways are 14 blocks high, 5 blocks wide, and 10 blocks long, allowing you to place 5 spawning platforms. The lookout tower structures are 11 blocks high and 7 blocks square, allowing you to place 4 spawning platforms. The large tower structures with stairs and nether wart inside, or with a lava source inside, are 14 blocks high and 13 blocks square, allowing you to place 5 spawning platforms. Well, if you're still watching this, congratulations, you're very difficult to bore. I hope this has been of some help to you to getting more wither skulls. This has been Palladium PD, and I'm signing out.